What do you think of when I say digitising financial markets? Yes, it could be a snore fest, or perhaps a fraud fest.
We are following breaking news. FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried has been sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Or maybe just self-interest.
We're going to do something great with crypto because we don't want China or anybody else, and not just China, but...
The top 220 buyers of the Trump family's cryptocurrency have won access to an exclusive dinner with the president.
But the technology that drives crypto is also driving a change in the financial markets, from how you trade money to how you own a home. And our regulator is on board. Welcome to the NBR Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Shepherd. Shares. You own a tiny fraction of a company, and there's the share market where you can quickly and easily buy and sell those shares.
Sold, 1,500,000 to my right.
Houses. You can own fractions of shares in these as well, but buying or selling those shares quickly, not so easy. Which is where a startup called HomeShare comes in. It's a new financial product being trialled under the watchful gaze of the Financial Markets Authority.
HomeShare, what we do is essentially we fractionalize property.
Martin van Blerk is the founder.
So that might be a new term to some people, but for a lot of your audience, they might be familiar with syndication of property, where it's just a bunch of investors coming around to purchase a property. We make all of that digital. We make all of it easy and regulatory compliant. So we would take a property, split it into 1,000 shares, and then people can buy and sell those shares. Technically, how we do that is we put it into a unit trust. And so by buying a share in the unit trust, you own part of the underlying asset, which is the property.
Right. Sounds really simple. But of course, as with property, there are complications. So you maintain 1,000 shares in a property in a unit trust. But I mean, who maintains the house? Who screens the tenants? I guess it's going to be rented out. Who collects the rents?
Yeah, so that's how we're starting right now. It's just simple. Everything will be tenanted. Investors will buy shares in the property. Who currently manages it is Ray White. So we've got a partnership with them that they'll vet the tenants, they'll sort out the management of everything, and we'll simply on-charge all the shareholders of the property the Ray White fees.
Okay. And so how do I make money out of this if I'm an investor?
Yeah, well, that's what everyone wants to know. Really just the same way as a traditional property. We try to keep everything very, very easy to understand, very traditional, while just bringing in the digital aspect of it. So like a normal property, you would benefit from rental income. So every month, rental income is distributed to the 1,000 shareholders. You might hold 20 shares, so you'll get that proportion of the rental income, minus the management fees and any maintenance costs that may have arisen. Though we work with new builds at the current stage, so maintenance is fairly low.
Right.
And then obviously everyone wants to be in the housing market. As the prices go up, so will the value of your shares or the house that you own a share of. And then you can sell your shares or however many you want on our secondary marketplace.
Right. Okay. So as an investor, I'm hoping that, hopefully I'm going to get some ongoing rent or distribution of rent. Plus, if I want to get out of it, I might get some capital gain. That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Exactly.
But, what you're doing differently is that you're trying to make it just all digital. Like you buy the shares on your platform and you can sell the shares on your platform.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've probably had experience in the property industry before. There's a lot of middlemen, a lot of paperwork, a lot of things involved. It can be quite tedious. Really, once you sign up on the platform, you can buy a share of a home in a few seconds. It's just find the home you want. We provide a lot of due diligence documents at the bottom. You click buy, and then that's it. You own a share of the home. We really see it as a way to, instead of just owning one house, you could own a tenth of 10 homes across New Zealand.
Right. And what about sort of like things like conveyancing and getting my name on the actual share, the unit that's held in trust? I mean, how do you get around the legal side?
So that's been a very interesting process with our legal team figuring out how we can make things work, and that's where the FMA comes in, because this is not a standard way of approaching home ownership at all. And so they've really enjoyed sort of joining in the journey. They see this as the future. It's happening a lot overseas where a lot of tokenization and assets that are in the real world are being made digital. And so the FMA recognized that, saw our capabilities, saw the team we had and the product we're building, and now they're sort of helping us navigate the legal landscape to get this in front of all Kiwis.
Experimenting in the digital world is not new for Martin van Blurk. Kiwis may remember him from an NFT game project called Pixelmon.
The Pixelmon project raised millions of dollars but initially failed to deliver on the quality of digital art that was promised.
Some who collectively spent millions in crypto buying a Pixelmon digital image or NFT were not happy with the product. Whatever happened to Pixelmon?
Yeah, I mean, sort of as with all startups, there were a lot of learnings along the way, but we worked through them, we built up the project, we turned things around, we particularly honed in on the elements, like you mentioned, the artwork that people saw, and we improved everything, and we got it to such a point that it could be acquired by a Singaporean studio, and then they've taken the rest of Pixelmon, gone away and improved it, fleshed everything out, and just built it into a much bigger company. And I've sort of taken those learnings, come over here to HomeShare.
Yep.
And yeah.
HomeShare is one of 6 companies chosen to be in the Financial Markets Authority's new sandbox, a pilot program where innovative companies can trial products under the close supervision of the regulator.
A regulator has to be focused on consumer or investor protection. Mm-hmm. The challenge for a regulator is to balance that with other objectives around growth and innovation.
Daniel Trinder is from the Financial Markets Authority.
The sandbox it's a way in which a regulator, i.e. the FMA, is able to work with firms where the regulation doesn't quite fit the innovation. So
right.
if you think about how technology and finance are blurring at the moment, it means that the rules that are set down for the firms don't always apply properly.
Okay, so and that's the current situation in New Zealand.
Correct.
All right. And so the sandbox is an area where innovative firms get to trial their innovation. But what does it mean in terms of regulation, though? I mean, are they still regulated or is it leniency?
They're still regulated. It means we can grant them temporary regulatory relief, or it means we may say to them, we're comfortable running this for 50 consumers. So it limits the potential harm until we are both satisfied that some of the problems may be mitigated.
And for me, if I was a company that wanted to get into the sandbox, as it were, what did I have to prove to the FMA?
So you'd need to prove that your offering had genuine innovation, that some form of regulatory relief would help, that you were not high risk for consumers. So in other words, you're not selling very, very complex products to consumers who generally are fairly low educated.
Yep.
That you've got the skills and the experience in terms of the management team. So it's these types of criteria we look at.
Right. You talked about regulatory relief.
Yes.
What does that mean? Does that mean leniency? Do they get let off the hook if they make a mistake?
We have the option of, if we look at our formal tools, of an exemption. So there could be a particular rule that could make it very difficult for a firm to launch a product. It could be around disclosures. It could be that they'll be classified as, say, a debt instrument and the requirements that brought. And we can grant them temporary relief of that because sometimes the rules won't fit.
One of those playing in the financial sandbox could be looking for that kind of flexibility. Kiwi cryptocurrency exchange Easy Crypto has a digital coin called the NZDD. And this kind of cryptocurrency is known as a stable coin.
It is a digital representation of a currency, and in our case it's a digital New Zealand dollar.
Paul Quickenden is from Easy Crypto.
So the way it works is it's backed 1 for 1. So if you sent us 100 New Zealand dollars, we would issue 100 NZDD, which is the coin's name.
Yep.
And we would send that using blockchain technologies. So It's a parallel payment network, effectively, to the things that you use in your everyday life and banking and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, a parallel payment network. So what would I use a stablecoin for?
Well, it has various use cases. So in New Zealand, you can. There's some of our partners are using them to, pre-fund credit cards, so you can tap and go, and everywhere Visa is accepted. I think it's a Visa. You can also use them in crypto trading, because if you're trading in crypto assets and things are going up and down, you want kind of a safe haven asset, and so something that's very stable is the point, and so that's where the name stablecoin came from.
Okay, so let's just talk about that. So because cryptocurrencies can be extremely volatile, so why would I want to invest in these stablecoins so I could buy cryptocurrency?
Well, traditionally the biggest lag between you as a buyer or seller of cryptocurrency and getting the money into your bank or out of your bank is the banking leg, and so they were invented essentially to give people the speed of cryptocurrency, because you can trade very, very quickly, like seconds or minutes, rather than wait for an hour, 2 hours for the money to arrive. So you're trading, it brought the trading window forward.
Okay,
and it also gave you as a holder, that dry powder for market movements and all of that sort of stuff.
Right,
and
so you're ready to go straight away.
And you can use, not on our platform, because we've got that's not our focus, but on other platforms you can do limit orders and, when the price gets to X, trigger order Y, that sort of stuff.
That kind of trading.
Using stablecoins.
Right. Yeah. Okay, but you just said that your stablecoin, the NZDD, is backed 1-for-1 by the New Zealand dollar. So I'll give you $100, you give me 100 stable coins. Mm-hmm. That's right? So Does that mean I can always get my stable coins changed back into New Zealand dollars at the same rate?
That's the premise. Always 1-for-1.
Always 1-for-1. Yes. So you don't even clip the ticket to do these transactions?
No. So the current... So we're going to get into the sandbox, but the current arrangement is that the business that is the issuing company of the stablecoin makes its profit off the interest it generates from the money in the bank.
Yes.
So that enables us to do this 1-for-1 pairing without any clipping of the ticket.
Okay.
The trading business that is Easy Crypto also doesn't currently take any fees on that trading. So
okay.
There is some small network fees and possibly some bank fees, depending on how you do it, but we don't trade. We're a broker. We don't take any trading fees currently on that.
So you just raised a good point then. Okay, so I'm giving you. So I spent 10 grand on your stable coins, and so I've given you 10 grand cash. At the moment, you take the interest of that 10 grand cash to subsidise the business and of using these stable coins. Is that right?
Well, to run the operation.
To run the operation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you pay me? If I'm going to give you 10 grand and you're earning some money, are you going to give me some of that interest?
It's a fantastic segue. So right now, we don't. And the reason we haven't is because our advice at the time we launched the coin was that would make it become a financial product.
Yeah.
And now with the wonder of the FMA sandbox, we're in a kind of safe regulatory environment to just talk about and experiment with that concept of you getting a return on the coins that you hold in your wallet. And there's various different ways we can do that, but effectively, taking that lazy money, no interest bearing money, and making it interest bearing to some degree, and what that looks like and all that sort of stuff is part of the sandbox, and so it has to be answered.
Okay, so this is why you wanted to be part of the FMA sandbox, so you could develop this financial product.
Yes.
Basically, it's a debt security, right?
It could well be a debt security. There are a couple of other avenues there, but it could be.
So does this product exist elsewhere in the world? Because there are other stable coins out there, and they are backed by or pegged to the US dollar.
Correct.
This one would be pegged to the New Zealand dollar. Are you basing this on something else?
Look, there are people who have attempted to do this, and it's very jurisdictional dependent.
Right.
So you can imagine, the American SEC and finance laws are quite convoluted around this, and so they're a little bit behind. Whereas we're aware of some Asian markets and some other markets where they are starting to do this.
Are the Aussies doing it?
No.
The sweet spot for a stable coin is not so much the individual crypto user, but getting it adopted for international payments because of its transaction speed and low cost.
So stablecoins typically talk about remittance use cases, but it's actually more about cross-border payments.
Cross-border payments between countries.
Yeah, and if you're in the remittance space, I think it's the UN said, the average transaction is 6%. That's huge. If we're basically taxing the poorest part of the global population.
So you're telling me that in the international transfer market, 6% is the fee
in the remittance.
In
the business stuff, like we're hearing, and we've spoken to some small businesses who are doing global business, but they're losing 1 to 3% of their income,
right?
Just repatriating money backwards and forwards through the country.
Okay,
and so that's the sweet spot for this type of
And
technology.
so using a stable coin
happens instantly, so you don't have checks or even 3 or 4 day delays in the cost of capital, and at very low fees.
Bitcoin's rally has resumed in recent days, nearing those old January all-time highs. So what is next?
What's happening with the digitization of financial markets can be clouded by the latest Bitcoin headline.
Bitcoin just hit $100,000, and I'm going to explain to you guys exactly why.
Or more recently, the Trump coin.
Well, I don't know if it benefited. I don't know where it is. I don't know much about it other than I launched it. I heard it was very successful. I haven't checked it. Where is it today?
It can be frustrating for those in the industry wanting to get some cut through. Here's Paul Quickenden again.
What we'd love people to understand is there's millions of cryptographic assets now, digital assets, and they all have different use cases, and they're not homogenous. Bitcoin is a different asset from Ethereum, which is the number 2 coin, and stable coins are very different again.
And here's Martin van Blerk from HomeShare.
You can sort of see around the world it's starting to all venture towards this tokenization and this digitization of real-world assets, and I think HomeShare, among others, can really push this forward in New Zealand. It's the future.
That digital payments future is happening overseas. Major international financial players like investment firm JP Morgan and asset manager BlackRock are using the technology. For the moment here, 6 firms are getting to play in the FMA's financial sandbox, but there's an indication more may be welcome. Here's Daniel Trinder with the last word.
One of our learnings from this is that this is something where the market in New Zealand, we probably need to consult and talk to the market about how we can enable these types of technologies to be used more broadly in financial services.
And that wraps up this episode of the NBR Podcast. Thanks to Creative Director Michael Hickmott and content producers Joseph Hisayasu and Jake Latham. Links to social media clips used are in the description. Up next, it's budget time. I'm Simon Shepherd. We'll catch you then.